of Blockchat. Today, again, it's Makram Hani and Denis Petrovcic. Now, what will we be talking about today? There is a challenge that startups that are building tech solutions live. What they used to do, or what they are used to do, is develop an MVP with the seed funding that they have just to prove a concept or something that may work so that they can raise more money and then scrap that and move on. And I've always thought what a waste of time, energy, and money. Now, it's definitely much better to lose some time, energy, and money doing that rather than spending millions and millions and much more time and money developing a full fledged solution that um, since day one, hour one, prior to you proving your concept, prior to you proving that you want to develop this and grow it and scale it. And I always thought, is there a way for us to um, allow startups do a proper launch of a proper solution day one, hour one? I used to think that way because I didn't ever want to throw money and energy because most of my startups were funded by myself. So it was my money going there. I wasn't raising any money. And I wasn't raising any money because I felt that I don't want to put people's money at risk at the beginning. But the theory of an MVP works perfectly. So today we will discuss what we noticed a long time ago and why our white label solution can allow a company day one, hour one, develop and run with a solution that is scalable, where they do not need, after launching, to scrap it at a cost which is less than a cost of developing an MVP, at a cost of time and energy, not only of money, that is less than the time and energy utilized usually to develop an MVP. And what you will have at that time is the same full fledged system that you can scale with and you can scale to become the company that you want in the future. And this is what we'll be talking about today. We'll be talking about the whys from someone who's Denis, obviously, who've not only launched a startup and another, but also lived all of those challenges on a technical level and on a business commercial level as well, and have lived between startups, have raised money, have gone through a route which startups usually go, and have lived with many of those startups for a considerable period of time now. Denis, how are you today?
Hi, Makram. Doing well,
Are
doing
you
well. Thanks.
good?
Thanks for asking. Good.
Why would not why would actually we know why would anyone do or put an MVP together, but why would anyone who has a solution as an option similar to the white label solution that we offer, which is a full-fledged system day one, hour one, why would they require to think, or why would they consider launching a scrappable MVP, if I can call it that way, and then grow from that to something else, or scale from that to something else, maybe to a white label solution or whatever, knowing that again, the cost of time, energy, and money in launching a full-fledged system with us, which is full Web3, fully, you don't have, by the way, this is very important. Usually when we launch a startup, and I've done it before, the first system looks automated on the face, but on the back end is human beings moving everything, because it's just points that are not talking to each other. While you can launch with Blocksquare a fully branded white label solution that covers all your needs. Why?
Um, Honestly, I, uh, I've been, like you said, I've been through
And by the
the
way, it will not be
yeah.
acceptable to tell us there is no reason. We need to find a reason.
No, there's definitely reasons for developing your own. If I go from the experience at Blocksquare, we developed our own MVP, but the MVP at the time was multi-layered, and it was not just tech, but also finding the use case. And in 2018, it was, we had to first find the deal so that we thought there would be tech worth developing. At the same time, we wanted to do a token sale. And so we tried to figure out, can we do a UI for launching our token sale that we can then adapt to reuse that UI or upgrade it just a bit so that we could offer a tokenized property. And that was kind of the first step, was creating a KYC module, and then creating a couple, a step-by-step process to purchase tokens, and then to receive tokens in the end. And then once we did that, we had the challenge of creating an actual MVP, not for selling, utility tokens, crypto, but tokens, but to sell tokens that would kind of reflect the big plan that we were having and kind of support it and take us further along the way. And it took us half a year to develop just like this simple dashboard where people could then buy BSPT of the parking space. And that everybody following us knows that this was like the first property tokenized, and I believe the first property worldwide that was actually sold openly to whoever would apply to purchase it. And yeah, it took a lot of time and a lot of effort, and doesn't mean that when we started, from day one, it was like, and then T plus 6 months we would be live. No, it was actually more, obviously, because there was a lot of research to be done of how to implement it, etc. Today, developing in Web3 is much easier than 4 years ago. There's more things you can use, reuse, much more projects than open source code and whatnot. And even, the toolkit to develop Web3, it's much wider. But at the same time, it was a challenge. And here, if you compare this to utilizing something that comes out of a couple of years of development versus doing your own thing, you will never match that type of functionality set. You will never be able to reach the same level, and also on the safety and security part of things. So I think it's not comparable. But on the other side, if you're a startup and your goal is to raise money and you're a tech startup, you need to prove that you can build. You need to prove your investors that you have the ability to build something great out of nothing. And I think that's something that a lot of startup founders think that investors want to see. You being
Can I
able
ask
to
you a
build
question here?
your own platform. But yeah.
Let me ask you a
Go
question
ahead.
here,
Yeah.
because I want to challenge that thought. It doesn't mean that it's not right and people don't have that mentality or investors are not looking for that. It just looks like to me, I have a theory called the blind loyalty to the rules of nonsense, where we all have blind loyalties that are stuck in our mind, where we believe, for example, a businessman should come with a smile, a suitcase, and a tie. Well, today's businessman is with shorts, flip-flops, and a t-shirt or a nice shirt. Now, if you are a company that is a tech company today and trying to raise money, do you need to have your own servers, or do you use AWS or any other kind of servers around?
Exactly. That's exactly what
And
I
why
say.
don't you want to need to prove to people that you can manage servers? That's question number one. Question number two, why don't you host your emails on your servers? Why do you host your emails with Gmail or Google or Microsoft Office 365 or anything like that? Why don't you create your own module? When you are a company that's trying to raise funding, why do you use Salesforce? Why don't you develop your own CRM?
Exactly.
And we are a company that uses a CRM company, a CRM software that we haven't developed. We use automation modules that we haven't developed. I believe we heavily use Zapier. Yeah, do we?
Yeah, as well. Yeah.
By the way, we have a Zapier specialist here. He can automate anything for you in life, guys. Call Dennis for that. I hate him for that. I'm jealous because of this. I'm not wired to know how to do that well enough. We use we don't have our own servers. I believe we use AWS, and we have created arrangements with the Flux, if I'm not mistaken, so that we can hopefully have a kind of decentralized solution there. But still, we use other providers. Now, if you are using Office 365 or Google Mail for your mail solution, and you're using that for your cloud storage and,
Hmm.
who said that you need to develop your own tokenization module to
Yeah, it's
be credible that you can build?
exactly.
Is what you're trying to build only a module, or are you trying to build a business? Because I believe the challenge is in building the business, not only building the module. Tech is available. You build it, we build it, he builds it, anyone can build it. Anyone can have an email, but how to utilize the email well. And some people make money from the email. Some people actually are better to have only a junk box without an inbox. Um, that's the nature of how things happen. So give me your view on that, please.
I think here, you also said, I mean, you touched upon a point where you mentioned services that are, you know, the perception of people is they're too big to fail, right? Um, and um, and you can and thus should be reliable on the long run, right? You build on AWS. Why? Because you believe Amazon is going to, continue that service for another 5 years at least. So you won't need to bother with anything else. So you just, have that, and it's going to be reliably there, which might be true or not. Nobody's actually guaranteeing you this. It's just that you have that perception. So a lot of times, what we receive is kind of, um, a, the question is, what if Blocksquare fails? What if you guys are not around anymore? What happens to the assets that we've tokenized through you guys? What happens to, you know everything? And I think here they need to understand that we are building, or we built on Ethereum for that specific purpose, the tokenization protocol. And we're utilizing decentralized technology that is reliable, and it's always going to be there no matter what happens to Blocksquare. So the token contracts are on Ethereum. Um, you have, you can fully operate them. The issuers have ability to, as owners of the token contract, have the ability to call certain functions within those contracts. The corporate resolutions are stored on IPFS, and this is all technology that's not server based, and that's not Blocksquare based as such. It's technology that we have developed. Um,
I know
it's
what you
technology,
see now.
yeah. um,
Proceed, please. We'll tell. I want to ask a question after you finish.
you know that they still use doors, supposedly, as desks, because
Really?
yes, yes,
Ah,
that's
this is a
something I
door.
just
I never
read.
knew that.
I read this like, recently somewhere, that, oh yeah, I was reading a book by Ben Horowitz, and they at Amazon, they supposedly they still have doors, like old refurbished or discarded doors as desks, because they want to
Really?
reflect that every cent matters. Like they're not a company that overspends for luxuries. They want to have the best price on the market, and that's what every employee that comes to Amazon realizes very quickly.
So my question here, sorry, I interrupted what you were saying, the line of thought, but
Yeah,
here, my question is, um, you're right, 100%. Amazon today will probably live for another few years. I'm not sure if it will end up like AOL, or hopefully not. I love the company, but or Yahoo or any of the other services. But regardless, this is where they started. Now, I believe Blocksquare is way ahead of that today. And the theory here is, you always have a start, and you need to start somewhere. And as long as you start in that place, and people understand the sincerity of the module and the possibilities and the abilities to grow it, you'll get somewhere. So imagine you are a seller on Amazon that day. You have an account, and you're one of those suppliers who have an account on Amazon, and you were selling that day, and you used Amazon like your platform, your marketplace, to be able to sell your product, regardless if at that time I don't believe there was drop shipping. It is a revolution that happened afterwards. However, regardless if you're getting stuff from your mother's garden and packing it and selling it, or you make chocolate at home, or you buy from your grocery and you sell on Amazon, if you were selling that day, the value of that account only today is huge, regardless if it generates revenue or not, because the amount of trustworthiness it has behind it is huge. Do you want to wait until Blocksquare becomes as big as Amazon to have a marketplace, or do you want to start your marketplace today?
is that a question for me? Because you put me here on the spotlight. I'm not sure if this is a question for me or for the audience, but the thing here is, I don't want to sound presumptuous in my answer, or in this debate, but regardless of what size Blocksquare reaches, what I wanted to make the point of previously is that our customers are safe. Are safe because of the technologies we've implemented, and I just recently I learned about a competitor of ours that was relying on a company a lot of people in the Web3 space know, Wire, which kind of stopped providing services for some companies, and a lot of their clients have issues, right? And they have problems, and they are then obviously looking around, and that's how actually I learned about it. Um, and this kind of dependencies on other vendors. You need to choose your battles, right? Which dependencies you want to create and which you shouldn't. And a lot of times the cons about in regards to utilizing a white label solution like ours to start your business is basically um, dependency, being too much dependent on another provider that your core business is depending on. But it's a choice. In the end, it's a choice. Either you want to scratch this dependency and be totally independent, do everything from using tech that is as reliable as possible and building everything yourself. That's great. Or you can utilize some of the infrastructure that we provide. And by the way, it's not a decision that you need to utilize our marketplace as your main front end or main application. You can build your own app, but it's going to take you 6 to 9 months, maybe a bit even more, to reach a level that will suffice to be called MVP for the purpose of real estate tokenization. So that's another thing, Makram, that we haven't touched, is like, what are the requirements for an MVP, right? So today, if you want to do an MVP on a novel flying car, what's the MVP of a flying car? Let's just maybe discuss this part.
So
What do you
is it
what do you need to do an
is it what
MVP of a
Liam
flying
have
car?
done? Is it what companies similar to that have done? They
I mean,
have, in a way or
yeah,
other, created a car.
okay, and then they try to make it fly somehow, right? But like, I'm doing an
Sure.
imaginary company, right? We need to do an MVP. We have of a flying car. It's going to cost a lot of money. It's going to take a lot of time. It might take even 5 years to even create that MVP. So that's like a long period of time. So you need to have funding to be able to get to that level, so that you can say, okay, now we have an MVP. Now we have a concept flying car that actually works. It's not safe yet to fly for regular users, but it's something worth investing in and exploring further. Great. Now, in real estate tokenization, you need, to create at least deploy a token contract. It doesn't need to be an automated system that makes it easy to deploy at mass like we have, but you can just, create a token contract. That token contract, you can use certain standards that have whitelisting implemented, so that you don't need to audit that, but you can use standards that have been audited before, so you can cut down costs. Each smart contract you deploy, it's going to cost you between 5 and 10K, depending on the audit. Then once you have this, and this is just to develop an MVP, obviously, and then on top of this, you need to create a user interface. You need to integrate a KYC provider. You can develop your own KYC collection system that's not going to be GDPR compliant, probably, but for an MVP, let's say that it will do. And you will need to manually check people, etc. And will you be able to prevent fraud? Maybe. And then you will need to have a way to distribute those tokens. You can use contracts that have been in place before, so that's perfectly fine. And you need to collect payments somehow and issue invoices for those payments. So that's kind of the minimum requirement for an MVP. I don't see it as, doing a no-code website in a form. It's not like a website in a form, right? If you actually want to execute a token sale for a tokenized property, and there's probably parts that I haven't even touched upon. If you want to test the market, if there's a market for buying into real estate and investing in real estate, yes, you can have a form. And you can ask people around, do you want to invest here? And that might be your MVP. But then from here to offering a tokenized solution, if that's the goal, there's a long way.
Perfect. Let me ask you a question. A few days ago, when we were in our meeting and we were looking at the investor deck and we were talking about it, we're talking about numbers, looking at Boston Consulting Group and the numbers they've issued before, and numbers that we discussed internally on the growth that could be achieved and how can you go there. If I give you a few minutes to imaginary take me through a roadmap that you would see, um, it doesn't matter if you see the best case scenario or the worst case scenario, but you don't need to be optimistic or pessimistic. Let's say the case scenario that you would love to see in front of you, of how adoption will happen at scale, mass adoption, and how where will that start in the world. And again, that's just you giving your opinion about it. It may be scientific, non-scientific, it does not matter. And how will we go towards $1 trillion of real estate tokenized?
Yeah, I think that's a good, interesting question. You put me there on the spot. I mean, it's hard to predict what's going to happen, right? But if we put some basic things, look at some basic things that are happening around us, I think we have a market where people are looking more and more into various opportunities of where to invest. There's a possibility of things getting worse than they are. And I think that will drive capital from into real estate in the end, into real estate investments, and that's what's needed. And here I'm talking about the Web3 market, by the way, not the general economy, because that's I think where we need to look into when we're assessing potential investors right now to deploy capital into tokenized real estate. Um, and these are individual investors. It's DAOs. It's different other projects that are building on Web3 and making profits, looking where to diversify their assets to. And I think many think big players need to come in. I like to think that that's not required really. I think that it doesn't matter. It should. I hope that it doesn't matter if CBRE starts tokenizing real estate or not, because if that's the only driver, then it's never going to happen. If Web3 people need CBRE or Cushman and Wakefield's to tokenize real estate for them to trust in it and see value in it, it's never going to happen. It's not going to move.
Why would you believe so?
Because they don't have an incentive today to transact real estate in a tokenized manner.
They're aware. Don't
Because,
you feel that they're aware? For example, CBRE is our sponsor at Fibri, and
yeah,
they're aware. I believe that that's the future, isn't it?
of course, these companies are aware. They have an interest in tokenized real estate, but they're not going to drive the market forward. So what
So
I'm
what you're
saying
saying
is
is that they don't want to disrupt their own systems, their modules that are working. So it's similar to the example I give always of Marriott and Airbnb.
exactly. So for instance, Airbnb was around and Airbnb grew mainly because of the economic crisis in the US and elsewhere, because there was this mortgage crisis. People were losing houses, were defaulting, mortgages were defaulting, and people were really struggling to keep their properties theirs. And they then open up to the notion of opening up their own homes for people to live in, to rent out the guest room, or and that was what made Americans open up their homes, and that's what enabled Airbnb to become Airbnb.
Can I
Before,
let me take shreds of that and
yeah,
discuss something else? Let's say, when do you see asset-backed funding in DeFi?
asset-backed funding in DeFi.
Like real estate asset-backed funding in DeFi going mainstream again, because probably it's something that's being every day looked at and tested, but going mainstream.
Um, Mainstream where? Do you think mainstream, or mainstream in Web3? Because that's
Mainstream,
different.
mainstream. Don't you feel that Wall Street will be dominated by Web3 eventually, or no, you don't feel so?
Um, no, I don't. I think it's gonna always coexist. It's not that it's not gonna coexist. It's like the internet didn't dominate Wall Street. Internet just made Wall Street bigger in the end.
Yeah, but
So
the internet didn't coexist with fax except for a very short period of time. And the email, for example, as a
yeah,
tool. Yeah,
yeah.
and I believe that, uh, for example, DeFi um, is a method, yeah, of of transmitting economic value.
Yeah.
Don't you feel that um, some of those methods will replace others?
Yeah, of course. I mean, definitely it's gonna do some shifts, and I mean, things are gonna change. We don't know how they're gonna change, but essentially, if people don't need to utilize Wall Street anymore, and if people decide to migrate wealth from being in a bank to being in a wallet, then yeah, potentially it can disrupt the banking industry, right? Because
I believe that I believe that Wall Street will dominate at all times. And I don't dislike that at all. And I believe that they will obtain, and this is part of the adoption, they'll obtain methods from Web3 and they will obtain Web3 into becoming their own module. Now, what you're saying probably is, and correct me if I'm wrong, um, they cannot dominate Web3.
no, that's true. Yeah, I don't think
This
they
is what
can
you're saying.
dominate. I don't think that they can dominate Web3. No,
Okay.
I think that's the. I mean, I don't see it really.
Okay. So
If
you
Web3,
feel that
obviously, if
Web3 will
Web3
go.
develops in a decentralized notion, right? It's never going to happen. But if Web3 or if Web3 is dominated by companies disguising as Web3 companies, and because people don't tend to do enough due diligence, and so the centralized kind of Coinbase type of companies keep on growing and eating up the crypto space, then Web3 is kind of gonna not realize its own potential or kind of
Don't you feel
promise.
that decentralization can be achieved through central entities acting in decentralized manner?
Um, yeah, I mean, not really, because in the end, it's a decision that a centralized entity does. Here, the decentralization I see, it's like the world is decentralized in a way, but at the same time, it's concentrated. Power is concentrating in certain hubs, right? And that's always going to happen. Even in Web3, we see power being concentrated around certain people and companies. So it's in the nature of people to try and to become to try to become powerful as much as possible, and that's that's something that a lot of people try to achieve. Um, but if we go back to the discussion of growth in Web3 and real estate tokenization, I I like to think that it's a bottoms up, from the bottom up approach, where you can have startups and mid-sized companies that are really good at doing real estate in one specific niche in one market, and they just want to add a new spin to their business, which is tokenization. And if you just have those two combined, I think there's already, and you can replicate those relations globally, in different hubs and different places around. You create this movement that will ultimately kind of become huge if you sum it up into one.
Okay. So here a note, a shout out to the whales, BST whales in our community who are working hard to grow their holdings bigger. On you go, guys. That's cool. It's lovely to see more people committed to the long-term game. Um, if I want to ask you, Dennis, here, one before final question on this matter. I see that J.P. Morgan, Merrill Lynch, and the likes, and then those are only examples of corporate world as we know it today, especially in banking and finance. Um, I see that most probably they will end up every time, regardless of the technology or the tool, on top of it. And they will develop around the future that is becoming and that's happening. Um, I know that this is not an idea that's fancied by many because usually they're against the institutions that are working the current system because they believe those institutions resemble in a way or other the current system. I tend to like the idea of institutions resembling the current system and the institutions themselves and what they resemble. Um, do you believe that the ability of institution to adopt without harming the idea of total or not total decentralization, because probably there's no total decentralization, but balanced decentralization? Do you think that that's possible? Do you think that those entities, if they understand that they can unlock so much value through that, would do it? Would that be possible in your view?
I don't know. I'm not the right person to ask these kind of things because I never worked at a JP Morgan, for instance, and that's not the path I ever chose or had the chance to choose, in a way. So it's not something that
You
I
need
can
to ask
comment
Daniel.
on. It's Daniel is probably the one you need to ask, and I think this is like something that we've been asking you and Daniel to do for quite some time, and I hope you're gonna do it. And if not
Oh,
earlier, you're gonna do it not next week, but the week that follows, because Daniel's
oh,
coming here to Ljubljana for a week.
oh.
And yeah, so the thing
But
is,
what's your view on that? So, yeah, you may not
I
be an
don't really
expert
care
in this.
about the name. I don't really care about the names of who is in control. I honestly, I don't really oppose to any centralized control over things, because the more control and power you have, the more responsibility you have. And even though you make or certain decisions sometimes might be um, not look or not seemed or perceived as positive, it doesn't mean that the end goal is not positive and it doesn't mean also that it's like I'm not a conspiracy theorist where somebody wants to hold all the power in the world for themselves, because in the end, um, people like to live in peace and they like to
Okay.
live safely, right? So yeah,
Walk
but
with me, please, here on the on my thought. So the question was that if those companies are able to understand how to unlock value and they can do it,
yeah,
then we would, this is where the lead of my theory, we would be over the next months or less than years, we would in a very short period of time have everything Web3 fully adopted and goes mainstream because those entities can capture it and run with it big time, which they're trying to do. But if they're able to do that full fledged the right way, I believe it will allow everything. So, in other words, if I run with my theory on, I would say jump on today and try to become part of that, because it will not be years, most probably, for that tipping point to happen. If those institutions capture it, it will be moments until it's everywhere. So if I want to distribute something to 100,000 people today, it will be very difficult to distribute it because I need probably to visit 100,000 people or write 100,000 messages. Yet, if Amazon wants to do it, they can do it probably within seconds. If JP Morgan wants to do it, probably they'll do it within seconds. If Visa or MasterCard want to reach a million participants, they can do it in seconds and they will be listened to. So that's where I was going with my theory. What do you think of that?
that's
You
obviously
have no
true.
opinion.
No, I mean
So
that's
do you
obviously
believe
true. I'm
that
not
that
sure
will
if
not happen?
Yeah, that's obviously true. If a big organization that has a lot of customers around the world wants to do something new, everybody's going to learn about it, and that's perfectly fine. And the thing is, I I tend not to really um, put a lot of thought of what I can't do, because that's something we can't do, right? We can't act as Mastercard card or um, but obviously we need to think of what we can do, and what we can do is we can help those entrepreneurs who are interested in tokenizing real estate today and tap into the future, like you say. We can help them. We can help them with the infrastructure we built. We can help them launch a reliable or launch their new business or a new part of their current business in a safe, way that actually works. So they don't need to invent anything, but they have everything served on a silver plate, and that's our role here. How to enable? We're an enabler of for real estate companies that want to explore Web3. That's our role.
Guys, Dennis does not want to tell you that. Let me tell it to you. In my opinion, over the coming few months or very few years, mainstream Wall Street and corporate world, corporate America, and the rest of the world will jump on Web3. They started attempting that. And the minute that they discover how to unlock the value through that, they would. And the minute they do it, um, it goes full-fledged mainstream. So Amazon goes from that desk, which is a door, to Amazon today in a very short spread of time, because Amazon needed to develop too many things to get there. Yet, if Amazon at that point of time owned UBS, or if, sorry, if Amazon owned Denzis or DHL, or if DHL had that idea, it could have gone full on and reached and got that reach in a very short space of time. I believe that this is what will happen to Web3, especially when you talk about tokenization of asset classes like real estate. So I believe it's an opportunity for everyone who's in tech or real estate who want to approach that part of market, especially people who are in fintech and looking at assets and looking at asset-backed financing and this is an opportunity, and we provide you, if you're looking at real estate, with a solution that has been tested and that works and this is growing by the day. So hopefully you can have a piece of the future that you want. Dennis, do you have anything else you would like to tell everyone who's listening today?
Um, well, nothing special. I think those who are in our community on daily basis through Discord or Telegram or on Twitter or LinkedIn, they follow our progress and the day-to-day things that we do. There's a meme contest that Julia is running right now this week, and I think it's together with Near. And so that's one exciting thing for those who are into memes. Um, uh, and what we have is we got another audit of a smart contract from Haken. Um, just I think score of 9.5 or something like that, around that number. So really high. Good job to everyone in our dev team. Um, and yeah, and that's that's it. Looking forward to the next steps and new achievements next week.
Looking forward for the next block chat. Denis Petrovcic and Makram Hani. Thank you.